What if I told you that for thousands of years, some of history's most brilliant minds have been obsessed with cracking life's greatest secret, cheating death itself? From ancient alchemists brewing mysterious elixirs to explorers risking everything for mythical springs of eternal youth, humanity's quest for immortality has left behind a trail of astonishing tales. Today, we're unearthing 30 of these incredible stories, some whispered in shadows, others written in bold strokes across history. You'll hear about the legendary Philosopher's Stone, said to turn metal into gold and grant everlasting life. You'll discover why powerful emperors drained their treasuries chasing impossible dreams, and you'll meet the real people who believed they'd found the key to living forever. These aren't just myths, they're fragments of our deepest fears and wildest hopes. So let's begin where the obsession started and where it might still be hiding today. Long before pharaohs ruled Egypt or the first stones of Babylon were laid, a king's grief set in motion humanity's first recorded hunt for immortality. The Epic of Gilgamesh, carved into clay tablets over 4,000 years ago, tells the story of a ruler who had everything: power, strength, a kingdom. But none of it mattered when death stole his closest friend Enkidu. Crushed by loss, Gilgamesh does something no hero had dared before. He rejects the god's decree that all men must die. His journey takes him through deserts and across the waters of death, facing monstrous guardians and ancient sages, all for a chance to seize the one treasure that eluded even kings: everlasting life. Deep in Mesopotamian myth, death wasn't an end but a shadowy underworld where souls faded like breath on cold air. But Gilgamesh hears whispers of a loophole, a plant hidden in the ocean's darkest trenches, said to restore youth to whoever eats it. Imagine the desperation of a man who plunges into the abyss, tying stones to his feet just to sink deeper, grasping for a sprig of hope among the roots of the world. And when he finally finds it, the cruelest twist of all, the plant is stolen by a serpent, shedding its skin as if mocking his quest. That single moment captures the heartbreak of every immortality seeker, coming so close only to watch eternity slip away. What makes this story timeless isn't just its age, it's how raw and human it feels. Gilgamesh doesn't rage against death for power or greed, but because love made him mortal in ways he couldn't bear. And that's the paradox the ancients understood. The more we chase permanence, the more we confront what it means to truly live. Even 4 millennia later, that lesson lingers, written not just on clay, but in the choices we make every day. Centuries after Gilgamesh's fruitless search, another civilization became consumed by the same burning desire, but this time the quest took a far more dangerous turn. In ancient China, alchemists weren't just dreamers. They were meticulous scientists blending philosophy, medicine, and mysticism into their pursuit of the ultimate prize, the elixir of life. The Qin and Han dynasties became breeding grounds for these experiments, where scholars believed immortality wasn't just possible, it could be distilled, brewed, even swallowed in a single golden draught. At the heart of this obsession stood Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the ruthless unifier of China. Convinced his earthly reign should never end, he poured vast resources into alchemical research, demanding his scholars concoct the perfect formula. His palaces housed laboratories where mercury shimmered in bronze cauldrons, mixed with jade powder and rare herbs. The irony, many of these elixirs were laced with deadly toxins, including mercury itself, a substance we now know slowly poisons the body. Some historians believe the very potions meant to grant eternal life may have hastened the emperor's demise. Yet the most fascinating part isn't just the failed experiments, it's the alchemists' unshakable logic. They saw the human body as a microcosm of the universe where balance equaled longevity. Jade symbolized purity and permanence, cinnabar's vibrant red echoed the life force itself. Even when their mixtures proved fatal, their meticulous records laid groundwork for modern chemistry and medicine. These weren't mere mystics, they were pioneers, straddling the line between magic and science in a world where the boundaries blurred. Their legacy lingers in unexpected ways. Modern researchers have found traces of Qin Shi Huang's mercury-laden tomb, its rivers and seas mapped in shimmering toxic metal, a haunting monument to one man's refusal to accept mortality. And perhaps that's the true lesson here. The line between poison and cure, between foolishness and progress, is often thinner than we think. What began as a ruler's desperate gamble became a stepping stone for discoveries far beyond what those ancient alchemists could imagine. While the Chinese sought immortality in elixirs, across the world an even more tantalizing legend took root, one that promised not just endless life but restored youth. The Greeks whispered of a distant tribe called the Macrobians, said to live for centuries by bathing in mysterious waters. Herodotus wrote of their vitality, sparking imaginations that would burn for millennia. But it was Spanish explorers who turned this ancient rumor into history's most notorious wild goose chase. When Ponce de Leon set sail for the Caribbean in 1513, he wasn't just another conquistador, he was a man haunted by time. Battle wounds ached in his bones, and his once youthful vigor had faded. Tales from the Taino people spoke of a spring that reversed aging, hidden somewhere in the lush islands they called Bimini. What followed was a collision of cultures and desperation. Indigenous knowledge filtered through European obsession, spun into a fantasy powerful enough to launch fleets. The cruel irony, the Taino likely spoke of natural mineral springs with healing properties common across the Caribbean, not magical waters. But colonial greed transformed local wisdom into a myth of divine entitlement. For centuries after, maps marked phantom islands with the fountain's location, each failed expedition layering fresh exaggeration onto the legend. Even de Leon's own motives were rewritten. Historians now doubt he actively sought the fountain, yet the story stuck because it revealed an uncomfortable truth: how easily exploitation dresses itself up as discovery. Perhaps the real magic lies in how this tale outlived its seekers. From Florida's swamps to modern spa towns capitalizing on youth-restoring waters, humanity keeps retelling the same story. We've stopped believing in literal fountains, but not in our longing for what they represented. After all, isn't every anti-aging serum or longevity clinic just another ripple from that same ancient spring? In the shadowy workshops of medieval Europe, where candlelight flickered over bubbling alembics and cryptic symbols, a different kind of immortality hunt unfolded, one where science, mysticism, and sheer obsession collided. The Philosopher's Stone wasn't just a myth, it was the holy grail of alchemy, a substance rumored to transmute lead into gold and, more tantalizingly, bestow eternal life. But what began as a physical quest soon revealed something far deeper: humanity's hunger to transform not just metals but the very soul. Take Paracelsus, the 16th century physician who roamed Europe with a sword at his belt and a flask of mercury in his pocket. He scoffed at ancient texts, insisting the stone wasn't some literal rock, but a divine essence, a fusion of spirit and matter. For him, immortality wasn't about endless years, it was about perfecting the self, refining base human flaws into spiritual gold. His laboratories doubled as chapels where prayers mingled with chemical vapors, and yet even he couldn't resist the lure of a tangible elixir, scribbling recipes involving dew collected at dawn and the blood of red-haired men. Then there's Isaac Newton, a name synonymous with gravity and calculus, but few know he spent more time decoding alchemical manuscripts than studying physics. Hidden in his notes are cryptic references to the green lion and the menstruum of the moon, code words for stages of the stone's creation. Why would a genius of his caliber waste years chasing a fairy tale? Because to Newton, the stone wasn't superstition. It was the universe's ultimate puzzle, a key to unlocking divine secrets. His quest blurred the line between laboratory and scripture, proving even the brightest minds could be seduced by the promise of transcendence. The stone's legacy outlived its seekers. Jungian psychologists later saw it as a metaphor for psychological wholeness, the gold of self-awareness forged through life's trials. Modern chemists chuckle at the idea of metallic transmutation, yet the Large Hadron Collider isn't so different from Newton's crucibles. Both seek to unravel matter's deepest mysteries. Perhaps the alchemists' true failure wasn't their inability to cheat death, but their refusal to see they'd already found what they were looking for. Every time we strive to better ourselves, to turn our flaws into strengths, we're still chasing that same elusive stone. Among all the relics shrouded in mystery, none has captured the imagination quite like the Holy Grail. Originally a sacred Christian chalice said to have held the blood of Christ, its legend twisted and expanded over centuries until it became something far more potent, a vessel of eternal life. The Arthurian knights didn't just seek a holy cup, they pursued a symbol of divine favor, one whispered to heal wounds, restore youth, and even grant immortality to the pure of heart. Yet every version of the tale carries the same bitter truth. Those who chased the Grail most desperately were often the very ones doomed never to find it. King Arthur's fallen knight, Sir Galahad, is the exception, the only one virtuous enough to behold the Grail's full glory before ascending to heaven. But for every Galahad, there was a Percival who hesitated, or a Lancelot whose sins barred him from salvation. The Grail didn't just test piety, it mirrored humanity's frailty. Even in medieval texts, its power was paradoxical, a relic of death, Christ's crucifixion, that promised to undo death itself. And that tension only grew darker with time. By the 20th century, the Grail's myth had warped into something sinister. Nazi occultists obsessed with purity and supremacy twisted its legend into a tool of their ideology. Heinrich Himmler's SS scoured Europe for ancient relics, convinced the Grail could unlock invincibility for the Third Reich. The irony, their hunt for eternal dominance only hastened their ruin. In the end, the Grail's greatest lesson isn't about life or death. It's about the corruption that follows when mortals mistake a divine symbol for a weapon to be seized. What makes the Grail different from other immortality myths is its unattainability. Unlike elixirs or fountains, it was never meant to be possessed, only glimpsed by those who'd earned grace. Modern scholars debate whether it was ever a physical object at all, or merely a metaphor for spiritual fulfillment. But that's the genius of the legend. It taunts us with the idea that immortality exists, then reminds us that the pursuit alone might cost our humanity. Perhaps the true power of the Grail lies not in what it gives, but in what it reveals about the seekers themselves. Some curses promise power beyond mortal limits, but none carry the terrible weight of the wandering Jew's fate. This medieval legend tells of a shoemaker named Ahasuerus who mocked Jesus on his way to crucifixion, only to hear chilling words in response, "You will wander until I return." And so he walks the earth still, aging but never dying, a living ghost forced to witness centuries of human folly. What began as a cautionary Christian tale soon twisted into something far darker, revealing how fear of the other can turn myth into weapon. Early versions painted the Jew as a warning against blasphemy, doomed to regret his cruelty. But by the 13th century, the story had become a cornerstone of anti-Semitic propaganda, used to justify persecution across Europe. Preachers claimed sightings of this eternal wanderer in every generation, a convenient scapegoat for plagues, wars, and famines. The irony, a legend about divine punishment became an excuse for human violence, as if the mobs chasing him missed the lesson entirely. Yet the most fascinating twist came when writers reclaimed the tale. Goethe turned the wanderer into a philosophical figure, questioning the nature of time and redemption. Percy Shelley imagined him as a tragic observer of history's cycles, weary but wise. These reinterpretations stripped away the bigotry, exposing the deeper horror at the story's core, not a curse of endless life but of endless memory. To walk forever isn't the punishment, it's being unable to forget any of it. modern scholars see the wandering Jew as a mirror for our own anxieties about isolation and survival. In an age of digital immortality where every misstep lingers online, haven't we all become a little like Ahasuerus, trapped not by divine wrath, but by the relentless march of time we can neither escape nor erase? His curse endures because it was never really about him, it was always about us. Paris, 1749. A stranger steps into high society with no past, no family ties, just an air of impossible elegance and whispers that cling to him like shadows. The man called himself Count Saint-Germain, but those who met him swore he'd introduced himself by other names in other centuries. Fluent in a dozen languages, playing violin like a master, and dropping casual references to conversations with medieval kings, he didn't just baffle Europe's elite, he enchanted them. What set Saint-Germain apart wasn't just his skills, but his eerie insistence that time didn't touch him. He'd slip into stories of 15th century court intrigues with unsettling familiarity, correcting details only an eyewitness could know. When asked about his ageless appearance, he'd smile and hint at alchemical secrets, a powder that erased wrinkles, a tonic that halted decay. Louis XV's court fizzed with rumors that he'd been seen in Venice 50 years prior, looking identical, or that he'd supplied Cleopatra with jewels. Even his death in 1784 failed to stick. Reports placed him at diplomatic meetings decades later, unchanged. Behind the mystique lay a man who straddled science and sorcery. His notebooks detailed processes to dye silk in impossible hues and formulas for liquid gold tonics recipes modern historians suspect were early chemistry experiments. Voltaire, no fan of charlatans, called him a man who never dies and knows everything. But the truth may be simpler and sadder. Saint-Germain was likely a brilliant impostor, exploiting the era's obsession with secrecy and the occult. In an age before photography or passports, reinvention was effortless for those with enough charm. Yet the legend outlived the man. Theosophists later claimed he was an immortal ascended master guiding humanity. Nazis, ever hungry for esoteric power, included him in their occult research. Today, he's a fixture in vampire lore and conspiracy theories. But perhaps his real magic was this: in making people believe he'd cheated time, Saint-Germain proved how desperately we want to think it's possible. The Count didn't need immortality. He understood that mystery, once unleashed, never truly dies. Paris in the late 1300s was a city of scholars and scoundrels, where handwritten books passed between hands like secrets, and no one guarded his pages more carefully than a quiet notary named Nicholas Flamel. To his neighbors, he was just a humble scribe copying manuscripts for a living. But centuries after his death, whispers began that Flamel had cracked alchemy's greatest secret, using the philosopher's stone to amass wealth and cheat death itself. The truth, far stranger than fiction, woven from equal parts accident, greed, and the power of a good story. The facts are simple. Flamel existed, owned property, and even left behind a will specifying funding for churches and hospitals. But here's where the myth begins. In 1612, a bookseller published Flamel's supposed alchemical diary, filled with coded illustrations of serpents, angels, and a mysterious book said to reveal the stone's recipe. Never mind that Flamel himself never claimed to be an alchemist. Readers devoured the tale of this ordinary man who'd unlocked eternity. By the 1700s, rumors claimed he'd been spotted in opera houses, still alive centuries after his recorded burial. What transformed Flamel from historical footnote to legend was a perfect storm of circumstance. His will's charitable donations fueled speculation. Where did a scribe get such wealth? The cryptic carvings on his Parisian tombstone, likely just standard Christian imagery, became proof of hidden knowledge. And crucially, he lived just early enough that no portrait survived, leaving his appearance to the imagination. By the time Victor Hugo's name dropped him in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Flamel was no longer a man but a symbol, the everyman who outsmarted death. modern science has debunked Flamel's alchemical fame, yet his legacy thrives in pop culture. Harry Potter fans will recognize him as the creator of the Sorcerer's Stone, a nod to how thoroughly fiction adopted him, but the real magic lies in why we keep resurrecting his story. Flamel represents the tantalizing idea that immortality isn't just for kings or wizards, it might hide in the hands of someone ordinary, waiting to be decoded. The irony, the man himself might have laughed at the myth. After all, his true immortality came not from elixirs, but from the human hunger to believe that somewhere someone beat the system. Few secret societies have stoked as much fascination or controversy as the Rosicrucians. Emerging in early 17th century Europe, their cryptic manifestos promised not just hidden wisdom, but the ultimate secret, mastery over death itself. At the center of this mystery stood Christian Rosencreutz, a figure as enigmatic as his teachings. According to legend, after traveling the East to uncover esoteric knowledge, he was entombed in a vault for 120 years, only for his followers to discover his perfectly preserved body, as if he'd merely been sleeping. The Rosicrucian manifestos read like something from a fantasy novel. They described invisible colleges of enlightened adepts, cities of gold hidden in plain sight, and most tantalizingly, the elixir of the wise capable of extending life indefinitely. What made these claims so electrifying was their timing. Europe was teetering between scientific revolution and mystical obsession. Reformers saw Rosencreutz's resurrection as proof of divine knowledge, while skeptics dismissed it as clever allegory. But the real power of the legend lay in its ambiguity. Was Rosencreutz a historical figure, a symbolic ideal, or something in between? Even today, scholars can't agree. By the 19th century, Rosicrucian ideas had morphed into sprawling occult movements. Freemasons borrowed their symbols, mystics like Madame Blavatsky wove their doctrines into new spiritual tapestries. Some branches claimed direct lineage from Rosencreutz's original brotherhood, insisting their inner circle still guarded immortality rituals. The irony. The more these groups promised physical eternity, the more their teachings emphasized spiritual rebirth. Their alchemy wasn't about cheating death, it was about transcending it through enlightenment. Modern science might scoff at the notion of secretive immortals, but the Rosicrucians' influence is undeniable. Their blend of mysticism and proto-scientific inquiry paved the way for everything from germ theory to psychology. And perhaps that's their true legacy, not a literal elixir, but the idea that some discoveries require looking beyond the visible. After all, in a world where genetic engineering now tinkers with lifespan, who's to say the old adepts were entirely wrong? The vault may have been metaphorical, but the quest it inspired was very real. In the mist-shrouded peaks of ancient China, where waterfalls cascaded into hidden valleys, a different kind of immortality took shape, not through elixirs or alchemy, but through harmony. The Taoist sages spoke of the 8 immortals, beings who transcended mortality not by fighting nature, but by becoming one with its flow. Each immortal embodied a different path to eternal life, from the scholar wielding a magic flute to the beggar clutching an enchanted gourd. But beneath their colorful legends lay a philosophy that turned the very idea of cheating death on its head. Take Zhang Guolao, the eccentric hermit who rode a white mule backward, symbolizing the Taoist principle of reversing time. Or Lu Dongbin, the swordsman who discovered immortality wasn't in battle but in mastering the breath, a single exhalation lasting years. These weren't just fairy tales, they were living metaphors for practices still used today. Taoist adepts believed longevity began with defeating the 3 corpses, invisible parasites said to live inside every person, hastening death by reporting sins to the heavens. To silence them, monks practiced Thai Roman 11 embryonic breathing, a technique mimicking the stillness of the womb to reset the body's clock. The real magic, though, lay in their herbal lore. Ginseng roots shaped like men were prized not as superstition, but because their resemblance hinted at nature's wisdom. pine resin and lingzhi mushrooms featured in elixirs not for their mystical labels but for compounds we now know boost immunity. Even their famed mercury pills had a twisted logic. In tiny doses, heavy metals were thought to purge corruption from the flesh. The brilliance of Taoist immortality wasn't in defying decay, but in seeing the body as a garden tended well and it might flourish beyond its season. What makes these stories endure isn't just their whimsy, but their startling prescience. Modern science confirms what the ancients sensed, that breathwork reduces cellular aging, that certain fungi fight inflammation, that balance extends life. The 8 Immortals' greatest lesson: true longevity isn't stolen, it's cultivated, one mindful step at a time. And perhaps that's why their images still grace temples and teahouses today, not as gods to worship, but as reminders that eternity lies in the choices we make each day. While most cultures feared death, ancient India's Vedic hymns sang of 2 radiant figures who raced against time itself, the Ashvins, twin gods of dawn and healing. Golden charioteers who outran the sun, these divine brothers weren't just symbols of immortality. They were cosmic physicians dispensing miraculous cures from their nectar-filled jars. Legends tell of them restoring sight to the blind, mending shattered limbs, even resurrecting the aged sage Chayavana, wrinkles melting away like wax as his body regained the vigor of youth. But their true power lay in how seamlessly they wove together the threads of medicine, mythology, and a profound understanding of life cycles. Unlike Western pursuits of eternal life, the Ashvins didn't promise to freeze time. They embodied its rhythm. Their chariot wheels turned with the seasons, their remedies working in harmony with nature's ebb and flow. This wasn't immortality as defiance, but as alignment. Ayurveda, India's ancient medical system, echoes this philosophy. Texts like the Charaka Samhita describe rejuvenation therapies, rasayanas, not as attempts to cheat death, but as ways to sync the body with cosmic order. Herbs like amla and ashwagandha weren't mystical shortcuts. They were tools to restore balance, much like the Ashvin's nectar brought harmony to those they healed. The brilliance of this mythology lies in its layered metaphors. The twins' chariot, drawn by horses faster than thought, mirrors the pulse of prana, the life force Ayurveda seeks to regulate. Their duality, one brother associated with the morning star, the other with the evening star, reflects the constant interplay of creation and decay. Even their most famous feat, reviving Chayavana, carries deeper meaning. The sage renewal came after ritual offerings, implying immortality wasn't taken but earned through reverence for natural laws. Today, as modern science rediscovers the wisdom of circadian rhythms and holistic healing, the Ashvins' legacy feels startlingly relevant. Their nectar wasn't just a mythical potion. It was a reminder that longevity thrives in partnership with time, not conquest over it. Perhaps that's why their hymns still resonate after millennia, not as a call to escape mortality, but to dance with it gracefully like charioteers racing the dawn. High in the thin air of the Himalayas, where snow meets sky, Tibetan monasteries hold a secret so extraordinary it defies everything we know about the physical body. It's called the rainbow body, an alleged transformation where lifelong meditators at the moment of death dissolve into pure light. Witnesses describe flesh becoming radiant, shrinking over days until only nails and hair remain, sometimes leaving behind a prismatic glow in the air. This isn't allegory. Monks and villagers claim to have seen it with their own eyes. The process begins long before death. Practitioners of Dzogchen, Tibetan Buddhism's most esoteric teachings, spend decades refining awareness to dissolve the illusion of separation between body and universe. When mastered, the result is said to be Jalu, the rainbow body of light, where even atoms surrender their grip. The parallels to other traditions are striking. Christians speak of saints' bodies vanishing from tombs. Hindu yogis describe Mahasamadhi, where adepts dematerialize at will. Even modern near-death accounts echo this theme. countless survivors recall looking back to see their physical form glowing or translucent. Science has no easy explanation, but researchers note curious details. Rainbow body cases often involve years of calorie-restricted diets and extreme meditation, known to alter cellular metabolism. Some speculate about biophoton emission, the faint light all living cells emit amplified beyond normal limits. Skeptics dismiss it as myth, yet even they pause at the consistency of centuries of eyewitness reports from disparate cultures. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between physics and faith. What makes this phenomenon so compelling isn't just the spectacle, it's the implication. If consciousness can transfigure matter, then death might not be an end but a transformation. The rainbow body doesn't promise immortality as we imagine it. Rather, it suggests existence isn't bound by the body at all. In a world obsessed with preserving flesh, these monks propose something far more radical, that the ultimate escape from death isn't fighting decay but transcending form itself. In the heart of Renaissance Europe, where Gothic spires pierced the sky and the Vltava River whispered secrets, Emperor Rudolf II transformed Prague into a kingdom of alchemical dreams. His court wasn't filled with typical nobles. It swarmed with mystics, astronomers, and most intriguingly, men who claimed to hold the secret to eternal life. Among them, none stood out like the infamous duo, John Dee, the Queen's own astrologer, and his enigmatic partner, Edward Kelly. But while Dee sought divine knowledge, Kelly's ambitions ran darker, and his experiments with something called projection powder would leave even the most skeptical observers questioning the boundaries of life and death. Kelly wasn't just another charlatan, a convicted forger with a penchant for the occult. He dazzled Rudolf with demonstrations where common metals allegedly transformed into gold. Yet his most shocking claim involved a crimson powder, a substance he insisted could not only transmute matter but extend human life indefinitely. Witnesses swore they saw him sprinkle it over aged wine, restoring its bouquet as if time itself reversed. Rumors spread that he'd tested it on a dying courtier, who reportedly regained strength for weeks before mysteriously vanishing. Whether trickery or tragedy, the stories clung to Kelly like alchemical fumes. The truth behind the powder remains a puzzle. Some historians suspect it contained antimony, a toxic metal that can induce temporary euphoria, explaining the rejuvenation effects. Others point to Kelly's obsession with the legendary Red Lion, an alchemical symbol for perfected matter, but the most haunting theory that Kelly believed his own myths. Letters reveal his descent into paranoia, convinced angels or demons had granted him forbidden knowledge. When Rudolf finally imprisoned him for failing to produce more powder, Kelly allegedly tried to escape by tying bedsheets into a rope and fell to his death, a fittingly tragic end for a man who promised to cheat mortality. Prague's alchemical legacy lingers in its cobblestone streets, where hidden symbols still adorn buildings. Modern chemists laugh at the idea of projection powder, yet Rudolf's patronage unknowingly funded early scientific inquiry. The irony is profound. In chasing immortality, these men stumbled upon truths about metallurgy, medicine, and human nature itself. Kelly's story isn't just about fraud or folly. It's a cautionary tale of how easily the line between genius and madness dissolves when eternity hangs in the balance. Under the golden fields of Suffolk in the year of our Lord 1150, villagers stumbled upon a sight that would haunt English folklore for centuries. Two children, trembling near a wolf pit, their skin tinted a ghostly shade of green. The boy and girl spoke no known language, refused all food but raw beans, and wept under the sun's glare. When they finally learned to communicate, their story tumbled out in fragments. They came from a twilight realm called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never rose and time stood still. Was this a medieval glimpse into parallel worlds or something far more human? Skeptics have long dismissed the tale as malnutrition lore, the green hue. Possibly chloroses from iron-deficient diets, a condition once common among famine-stricken peasants. Their aversion to sunlight, albinism, or deep cave dwelling might explain photosensitivity. Even the underground homeland could mirror real mining villages where children toiled in perpetual darkness. Yet these rational theories crumble against unsettling details. The girl, after adapting to surface life, claimed her people followed a distant, glowing river, a description eerily reminiscent of modern accounts from near-death experiences describing tunnels of light. Others proposed darker origins. Some historians suggest the children were Flemish orphans displaced by ethnic violence, their strange coloring from toxic dyes used in wool production, a craft their region was known for. Their timeless homeland might simply have been a war-torn area where days blurred together in survival. But then why describe a place where the sky shimmered with perpetual twilight? Folklore scholars note parallels to Celtic myths of fairy realms, where time moves differently. Mortals return aged while dwellers remain unchanged. What makes this mystery endure isn't just the question of the children's origins, but what they represent. Every era reinvents the tale to fit its fears, aliens for the space age, multiverses for quantum enthusiasts. Yet at its heart lies a simpler truth, the universal fear of being lost in time, of worlds existing just beyond our perception. Whether the green children were refugees, mutants, or accidental travelers between realities, their story lingers because it whispers the oldest question of all: are we truly alone under the sun? Ayutthaya 1630, under the sweltering Thai sun, a lone samurai kneels before the king of Siam, his armor glinting amid a sea of silk-clad nobles. Yamada Nagamasa shouldn't have been here. A merchant's son from distant Japan, he'd arrived years earlier as a bodyguard, armed with nothing but a katana and the unbreakable code of Bushido. Yet by the time of his mysterious death, whispers already swirled that this warrior had defied time itself. Today, in certain Thai temples, devotees still claim to feel his presence, a figure eternally caught between honor and exile, his legend woven into the fabric of two cultures. What makes Yamada's tale extraordinary isn't just his rise to power, it's how his spirit refused to fade. After proving his loyalty in battle, he was granted lordship over an entire province, bridging Japanese martial discipline with Siamese diplomacy. But when political tides turned, his end came swiftly, poisoned, some say, by rivals fearful of his influence. Yet within decades, reports emerged of a spectral samurai haunting Ayutthaya's ruins, his ghost summoned by mediums to channel ancestral wisdom. Rituals honoring Yamada Daijin blended Bushido stoicism with Thai spirit worship, creating something entirely new, a fusion of two worlds as enduring as the warrior himself. The Bushido code taught that death was lighter than a feather, duty heavier than a mountain. But in Thailand, where ancestor spirits guide the living, Yamada found an unexpected afterlife. Mediums who channel him describe not a restless ghost, but a guardian one who speaks in archaic Japanese, yet understands the hearts of Thai devotees. Scholars argue whether this is cultural syncretism or something deeper, proof that immortality isn't just about lasting forever, but about becoming part of a community's soul. Modern visitors to Nakhon Si Thammarat still leave offerings at his shrine-sake bottles beside jasmine garlands. Some come seeking protection, others a tangible link to history's shadowy edges. Yamada's legacy lies in the space between fact and faith, where a warrior's ideals transcend even death. Perhaps that's the truest form of eternity, not dodging the grave, but living on in the stories we inspire long after our swords have turned to rust. Beneath the Gothic spires of Transylvania's castles lies a truth far stranger than fiction, one that binds history's most infamous prince to immortality, myths older than the Carpathian mountains themselves. Vlad III, better known as Dracula, didn't just inspire vampire legends. His brutal reign intertwined with ancient Strigoi beliefs, creating a legacy where politics and the supernatural bled together. But to understand how a 15th-century warlord became the face of eternal undeath, we must step away from Hollywood fangs and into the shadowy crossroads of Slavic folklore and medieval warfare. Long before Bram Stoker penned his novel, Eastern Europe whispered of the Strigoi restless spirits that rose from graves to drain the life from the living. Unlike Western vampires, these weren't elegant aristocrats, but grotesque remnants of sinners, witches, or those buried improperly. Villagers warded them off with garlic, hawthorn stakes, and most chillingly blood rituals aimed at stealing their vitality. Some accounts describe healers drinking drops of animal blood mixed with herbs, believing it transferred the creature's strength. It was a world where death wasn't an end, but a contagious curse one could exploit. Enter Vlad Dracula. His nickname, meaning son of the dragon, hinted at nobility, but his reputation painted a darker picture. Impaling enemies on stakes wasn't just punishment, it mirrored Strigoi deterrence. His habit of dining among corpses, a psychological weapon, yes, but also an eerie parallel to undead feasts. When Saxon pamphlets spread tales of him dipping bread in victims' blood, fact blurred with folklore. The irony, Vlad likely used these rumors to terrify foes, never imagining they'd eclipse his real history. Modern scholars note a crucial twist. Strigoi myths often targeted outsiders, reflecting societal fears. Vlad, a Christian warrior against Ottoman expansion, became both hero and monster, a man so feared in life that death couldn't contain his legend. Today, Romanian villages still recount older tales of milk-drinking spirits and blood-stealing revenants, proving Dracula's true power wasn't in cheating death, but in becoming the mirror that shows us our own darkest fixations. The real horror isn't that he might live forever, it's that we keep resurrecting him generation after generation. High in the sacred caves of antiquity, where volcanic fumes curled like ghostly fingers, the Sibyls spoke truths that shook empires, but their gifts came at a terrible price. These prophetesses of the ancient Mediterranean weren't just seers, they were living paradoxes, granted unnaturally long lives that stretched into centuries while their bodies withered into husks. Of all these figures, none embodies the horror and grandeur of this bargain more than the Cumaean Sibyl, whose story begins with divine favor and ends as a warning etched into myth itself. Apollo himself offered her immortality, or so the legend goes. The god, smitten by her wisdom, promised as many years of life as grains of sand she could hold in her hand. But when the Sibyl refused his advances, his gift twisted. She lived on, yes, but without eternal youth. Ovid's writings describe her shrinking year by year until only her voice remained, echoing from a jar where children tossed pebbles to hear her croak prophecies. What began as divine boon became a curse, infinite time trapped in a crumbling vessel, like a candle that burns endlessly while its wax drips away. Modern cryonics might seem worlds apart from these myths, yet the parallels are haunting. Companies today promise a different kind of suspended animation, freezing bodies in liquid nitrogen, banking on future science to revive them. Like the Sibyl's bargain, it's a gamble on time versus decay. But where she embodied the tragedy of endless aging, cryonics sells the fantasy of skipping past it entirely. The crucial difference, the Sibyl's fate, reminds us that longevity without quality might be its own kind of prison. What lingers in these tales isn't just the horror of physical decay, but the deeper question of what we sacrifice in chasing more time. The Sibyl traded autonomy for existence, her voice reduced to a party trick for the curious. Today's immortality seekers face similar dilemmas. At what cost would we extend our years? The ancients understood something we often forget, that life's value isn't measured in duration alone, but in the freedom to live it fully. Perhaps that's why the Sibyl's whispers still unsettle us, not because she lived too long, but because she forgot to ask what living truly meant. In the bustling markets of 9th century Baghdad, where the scent of spices mingled with the ink of scholars, a physician named Abu Bakr al-Razi penned a startling claim that aging wasn't inevitable. His clinical notes described syrups of crushed pearls and mercury-laden tonics, concoctions he swore could halt time's march. Al-Razi wasn't alone. Across the Islamic Golden Age, physicians blended Greek philosophy with Persian alchemy, creating medical texts that read like immortality manuals. But what set these scholars apart wasn't just their audacity, it was their meticulous science hidden beneath the mystique. Al-Razi's Kitab al-Hawi detailed elixirs with alarming ingredients: mercury to purify the blood, gold flakes thought to mirror the sun's eternal glow. To modern eyes, these seem like poisons, and they were. Yet buried in the toxicity lay flashes of genius. His mercury salves, though deadly in excess, showed early antimicrobial properties. Gold nanoparticles, now used in cutting-edge cancer treatments, eerily echo his intuition that precious metals might stabilize the body. The real breakthrough, though, was his method. Unlike European alchemists shrouding work in secrecy, Al-Razi insisted on rigorous trials, documenting failures as meticulously as successes. His pursuit wasn't just mystical, it was methodological. Other luminaries pushed further. Ibn Sina's canon of medicine categorized aging as a disease, one potentially treatable with herbal infusions and regulated diets. His prescriptions for pomegranate and saffron sound quaint until modern labs confirmed their anti-inflammatory effects. Even the mercury obsession had logic. Arab chemists observed how the metal's liquid shimmer defied decay, symbolizing resistance to time. The tragedy, their brilliance outpaced their tools. Without microscopes or biochemistry, they groped toward truths just beyond reach. Why does this matter today? Because these physicians framed a question science still grapples with. Is aging a fixed fate or a solvable puzzle? Their mercury tonics killed as often as they cured, yet their vision, that medicine could extend vitality, not just delay death, fuels our own longevity research. In labs from Boston to Dubai, researchers now study gold nanoparticles and fasting mimics, not so different from Al-Razi's audacious dreams. The lesson isn't in their elixirs, but in their refusal to accept that time must always win. In the swirling deserts of the Middle East, where mirages dance on the horizon, there walks a figure draped in green, a mystic said to sip from the fountain of life itself. He's known as Al-Qidr, the Green One, a timeless guide appearing in Quranic tradition and Sufi lore. Unlike alchemists or emperors who sought immortality through potions or power, Qidr represents a different path, one where eternity isn't found in the body, but in the soul's union with the divine. His legend asks a haunting question: what if the secret to living forever isn't in stopping time, but in stepping outside of it entirely? Sufi mystics took this idea to astonishing heights. Whirling dervishes didn't just dance, they spun as a form of prayer, their robes fanning like celestial orbits as they sought to dissolve the self into God's presence. Their rituals, like the Dhikr chanting sacred names hundreds, even thousands of times, weren't mere repetition. Practitioners describe these moments as cracks in time, where minutes stretch into what feels like hours and the boundaries between mortal and eternal blur. Historical accounts speak of saints like Rumi's teacher, Shams-e Tabrizi, who seemed to flicker in and out of ordinary perception, appearing simultaneously young and ancient to those who met him. But the most striking aspect of these traditions isn't the supernatural claims, it's the science hidden beneath the poetry. Modern studies on contemplative practices reveal startling parallels. Advanced meditators can alter their perception of time, slowing brainwaves to states where moments elongate. The Sufi concept of fana, or annihilation of the ego, mirrors findings in neuroscience about how transcendent experiences temporarily silence the brain's default mode network, the part that constructs our sense of linear time and separate identity. Even the dervish's spinning finds echoes in therapeutic techniques for trauma release, proving motion can rewire consciousness. What makes the Sufi master's approach so compelling is its inversion of the immortality quest. Where others fought decay, they embraced surrender. Where alchemists sought to perfect the body, they sought to transcend it. Qidr's lesson lingers not because he cheated death, but because he represents a truth far more radical, that the moments we touch the infinite are the ones that truly outlast us. In a world obsessed with adding years to life, these mystics whispered of adding life to years, one whirling, breathless moment at a time. The Emerald Hills of ancient Ireland whisper tales of warriors who defied the grave, not through brute strength but by tasting the secrets of the cosmos itself. At the heart of these legends swims the salmon of knowledge, a creature said to hold all the world's wisdom in its silver scales. The myth tells of young Fionn mac Cumhaill, who accidentally burned his thumb while cooking the salmon and gained its power by sucking the wound. But this isn't just a quirky origin story, it's a window into the Celtic vision of immortality, where eternal life wasn't about endless years, but about merging with the rhythm of nature itself. Druids taught that time wasn't a straight road, but a spiraling river. Their sacred oak groves were said to exist outside its flow, places where the veil between worlds grew thin. Warriors who trained in these enclaves didn't just learn combat. They practiced shape-shifting, entering trances to walk as stags or ravens, symbolizing souls unbound by mortal limits. The salmon's legend mirrors this. By consuming wisdom from the living world, Fionn didn't cheat death, he absorbed it into his very being, becoming part of an endless cycle. Archaeology hints at how deeply these ideas ran. Bog bodies like Old Croghan Man, preserved with buttercup garlands, suggest ritual deaths meant to feed the land's vitality, a grisly yet sacred trade of one life for nature's renewal. Even the Celtic afterlife, Tir na an Og, wasn't a static paradise but a realm where youth and feast flowed eternal, yet heroes could return to earth when called. This wasn't immortality as frozen perfection, but as participation in something vast and pulsing. Today, scientists marvel at salmon's real-life migration, how they carry ocean nutrients upstream, feeding entire forests. The ancients might have seen this as proof of their myths, that wisdom, like life, isn't hoarded but shared. The Celtic warrior's true legacy isn't in living forever, but in reminding us that eternity isn't about stopping time, it's about flowing with it, like a salmon leaping upstream toward the stars. High in Japan's Sanzan Mountains, where mist curls like incense through ancient cedar trees, a handful of monks achieved what no elixir or alchemy ever could. They turned their own bodies into eternal vessels of enlightenment. These are the Sokushin Butsu, the self-mummified Buddhas, whose preserved forms still sit in meditation centuries after their final breaths. But this wasn't some act of macabre devotion. It was a grueling spiritual marathon, a 3,000-day ritual where every step brought them closer to becoming living and then everlasting icons. The process began with a diet so harsh it rewrote biology itself. For 1,000 days, monks ate only nuts, berries, and resin from yorushi trees, a toxic sap normally used to lacquer bowls. This purge wasn't about starvation but transformation. The resin, deadly to most, seeped into their tissues, poisoning the body just enough to repel insects and decay after death. Next came another 1,000 days of roots and bark, whittling fat and muscle to near translucent leanness. Finally, sealed in a pine wood box barely larger than their folded legs, they chanted until their last breath, tubes channeling air through the buried chamber until even that was removed. Those who succeeded, fewer than 24 across centuries, emerged not as corpses, but as statues of skin and bone, their features eerily serene. Today, you can still meet these immortal monks. In Yamagata's temples, their lacquered bodies sit robed in saffron, skin stretched like aged parchment over hollow cheeks. The most famous, Shinyokai Shonin, died in 1783, yet his glass-eyed gaze still holds the weight of his sacrifice. Visitors speak of an electric hush in those chambers, as if the air itself remembers the centuries of prayer that saturated every atom of these forms. Scientists confirm what devotees already knew: no embalming could achieve such preservation. The bodies are miracles of physiology, chemistry, and something beyond measurement, an unwavering will to transcend flesh. What unsettles modern observers isn't the mummies' existence, but their ambiguity. Were these acts of ultimate discipline or a slow suicide? The answer lies in how they're treated, not as relics but as living teachers. Devotees polish their fingernails, offer fresh robes, even whisper confessions to ears that stopped hearing 200 years ago. In a world chasing immortality through cryonics and DNA tweaks, the Sokushin Batsu whisper a different truth, that eternity might not be about preserving the self, but surrendering it so completely that even time loses its grip. The Andes Mountains hold a secret that turns our understanding of monarchy upside down. For the Inca, death wasn't the end of a king's reign, it was just another phase of it. The mummified bodies of Sapa Incas, preserved with sophisticated techniques using herbs and resins, remained seated on golden thrones in their palaces, surrounded by servants who treated them as if they still breathed. These weren't mere relics, they were active participants in empire's rule, consulted for wisdom, honored in grand ceremonies, and even fed delicacies like maize beer and roasted llama. What set the Inca apart was their belief in Malqui ancestors who retained vitality and influence. A king's mummy or pala was more than a political symbol, it was a conduit to the divine. During festivals like the Inti Raymi, priests carried the royal mummies through Cusco's streets, their stiff limbs dressed in fresh textiles, their mouths ritually anointed with chicha. Witnesses described it as eerily lifelike. The dead rulers seemed to watch the crowds through sunken eyes, their presence as palpable as the mountain winds. But this practice had a dark pragmatism. Rivals often kidnapped mummies of past kings to legitimize their claims, sparking wars over corpses. When Spanish chroniclers first saw these preserved rulers, they recoiled, calling it idolatry, yet their records admit how skillfully the Incas mastered preservation. Modern archaeologists have found traces of cinnabar and plant compounds in mummy bundles, substances now known to slow decay. The irony, while Europeans sought elixirs of eternal life, the Inca had already achieved a kind of immortality, not through potions but through unbroken reverence. These mummies weren't just preserved bodies, they were threads in a living tapestry of power. A new Sapa Inca would rule alongside his ancestors' physical forms, their silent councils shaping decisions. In a civilization without written records, the dead became libraries of tradition. Perhaps that's the lesson hidden in the Andean peaks. True immortality isn't about defying death, but ensuring your voice never fades from the stories that guide the living. In the thin, icy air of the Himalayas, where snow leopards tread silently and monasteries cling to cliffs, there walks a different kind of immortal, not kings or alchemists, but saffron-clad ascetics who laugh at time itself. Among them, none is more legendary than Trailanga Swami, a yogi whose alleged 300-year lifespan defies every medical textbook. Eyewitnesses in 19th century Varanasi swore they'd seen him meditating underwater for days, untouched by decay, his skin wrinkled yet radiating an eerie vitality. But was this fact folklore or something in between? Unlike the quests for elixirs or fountains, the Sadhist path to longevity wasn't about conquering death, it was about dissolving into life's very fabric. Trailanga reportedly survived without food for decades, his body sustained by pranayama, the yogic art of harnessing breath as energy. Ancient texts like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika describe Kechari Mudra, where adepts redirect metabolic energy so completely that aging slows to a crawl. Skeptics dismiss these as exaggerations, yet modern studies on advanced meditators reveal startling truths. Some can lower their heart rates to near undetectable levels, enter suspended animation-like states, and even regulate body temperature through sheer focus. The real mystery isn't just the years these hermits allegedly lived, but how they perceived time itself. Pilgrims who met Trailanga described him reminiscing about events centuries past as if they'd happened yesterday, his sense of chronology untethered from linear flow. Neurologists now know that deep meditation can alter time perception. Minutes feel like hours, memories sharpen with surreal clarity. Perhaps the sadhist's secret wasn't stopping the clock, but stepping outside its rhythm entirely. While science debates the limits of human lifespan, the sadhists offer a different paradigm. Their immortality isn't measured in decades, but in moments of transcendence, each breath a rebellion against decay, each meditation a crack in time's facade. Whether Trelanga truly lived 3 centuries matters less than the legacy he embodies. That eternity might not be a quantity of years, but a quality of presence forged in the icy solitude of the peaks. Long before artificial intelligence dreamed of digital immortality, the deserts of ancient Persia whispered of another kind of eternal existence, one where every living being had a divine twin, a luminous guardian called the Fravashi. These weren't just spirits or angels. In Zoroastrian belief, these radiant counterparts existed outside time, guiding souls not just through one lifetime but across countless rebirths. Picture them as flickering flames in the cosmic wind, always present, always watching, carrying the essence of who we are beyond the fragile shell of the body. The Fravashis defied simple definition. They were protectors, yes, but also something deeper, a blueprint of the soul's perfect form, untouched by mortal flaws. Fire temples revered them not as distant deities but as intimate allies. Warriors prayed to their Fravashi before battle, trusting this eternal self would outlive any earthly death. What's striking is how this ancient idea mirrors modern transhumanist fantasies. When tech visionaries talk about uploading consciousness to machines, they're chasing a version of what Zoroastrians envisioned millennia ago, a self freed from biological decay. But here's where the paths diverge. Transhumanism often treats the body as a faulty device to be discarded, while the Fravashi embraced a paradox. It transcended flesh without rejecting it. Zoroastrian rituals involved exposing the dead to vultures, not out of cruelty, but to release the physical form gracefully, like shedding a worn-out cloak. The Fravashi didn't abandon the body, it honored the vessel before moving on. Modern brain uploading experiments might promise immortality through circuitry, but the ancients hinted at something more profound. That eternity isn't about escaping mortality, but integrating with it. Today, as scientists inch closer to digitizing human thought, the Fravashi's legacy lingers like an uncanny prophecy. They remind us that the hunger to outlast our bodies isn't new, only the tools have changed. Perhaps the real question isn't whether we can preserve consciousness, but what parts of the soul might slip through the cracks when we try. After all, the desert sages knew this truth. Some flames can't be copied, only carried. Beneath the aurora-streaked skies of Norse mythology, where the roots of Yggdrasil claw into the frozen earth, death wasn't an end. It was an invitation to the greatest feast hall of all. Valhalla, Odin's gilded battlefield, welcomed fallen warriors with a promise as brutal as it was intoxicating. Every dawn they'd rise again, their wounds stitching themselves closed, ready to hack and hew at each other until the sun set in a blaze of crimson. This wasn't heaven or hell, it was an eternal training ground for Ragnarök, where even immortality came with a price, unending violence. The Einherjar, as these chosen warriors were called, lived a paradoxical existence. By day, they tore each other limb from limb in exhilarating combat. By night, they feasted on an inexhaustible boar and drank mead that flowed from the udders of a cosmic goat. Odin didn't want passive souls, he wanted an army honed to razor sharpness, their instincts forged in the crucible of daily resurrection. Archaeologists have found Viking graves stuffed with weapons and gaming pieces, hinting at how deeply this belief took root. To die well wasn't enough. You had to live death even better, yet not all Norse warriors craved this blood-soaked eternity. Freyja, the goddess of love and war, claimed her share of the slain for Folkvangr, a meadow where peace bloomed eternal. Here, the dead reclined under flowering trees, their battles long over. No swords, no scars, just sunlight dappling through leaves that never fell. The contrast couldn't be starker. Odin's hall thrived on chaos while Freya's domain whispered of rest. What makes these twin afterlives so fascinating isn't just their duality, it's what they reveal about the Norse worldview. Valor mattered, but so did choice. A warrior might relish Valhalla's relentless adrenaline, while another longed for Folkvanger's quiet. Modern reconstructions of Norse belief often fixate on the glories of battle, but the sagas hint at something subtler, that even in myth, immortality wasn't one size fits all. Whether you craved endless strife or eternal serenity, the afterlife had a seat waiting provided you lived boldly enough to earn it. In the hushed study halls of medieval Judaism, where candlelight flickered over parchment inscribed with sacred letters, a different kind of alchemy unfolded, one where immortality wasn't sought in elixirs but in the very fabric of language itself. Kabbalists believed that Hebrew wasn't just a means of communication, it was the code by which God wove creation, and if one could decipher its secrets, even death might be undone. At the heart of this mysticism stood Abraham Abulafia, a 13th century sage who claimed that breath and letters could unlock eternity. His technique, called Tizaraf, involved chanting divine names in specific rhythms, syncing each syllable with controlled breathing until the body hummed like a tuned instrument. Disciples described trances where time seemed to pause, the soul stepping outside its mortal shell. Some accounts even speak of adepts who, through these practices, achieved Gilgul, a form of reincarnation where consciousness carried seamlessly from one body to the next. Was this metaphorical enlightenment, or did these mystics truly touch something beyond mortality? Then there's the golem, the legendary clay beast animated by inscribing Emet truth on its forehead. While often portrayed as a mindless servant, older Kabbalistic texts hint at a deeper purpose. These creatures were prototypes, attempts to bypass divine law by crafting life without birth or decay. The most famous golem, crafted by Rabbi Judah Loew of Prague, wasn't just a protector. It was a flawed experiment in cheating death itself. When the rabbi erased the first letter of Emet, leaving Met death, the creature crumbled to dust. The message was clear: true immortality couldn't be hacked into existence. It had to be earned through alignment with cosmic truth. What sets the Kabbalists apart from other seekers is their reverence for limits. Unlike alchemists who sought to conquer nature, they understood eternity as harmony with divine order. Modern neuroscientists might dismiss their methods, yet studies on mantra meditation reveal how rhythmic chanting can alter brainwaves, slowing perceived time. Perhaps the Kabbalists' real breakthrough wasn't escaping death, but expanding life's texture one sacred breath, one illuminated letter at a time. In the heart of Bantu tradition, there's a profound truth whispered beneath the baobab trees. That death doesn't sever ties between generations, it merely changes the terms of the relationship. Here, ancestors aren't relics of the past, but active participants in the lives of their descendants. Elders who have passed on become Amadlozi, the living dead, their presence woven into the fabric of daily life through rituals, dreams, and the sacred casting of bones. Take the Sangoma healers, South Africa's spiritual mediators who bridge the seen and unseen. Their divination kits filled with bones, shells, and carved pieces aren't mere trinkets. When cast onto a hide or mat, each fragment's position tells a story, guided by ancestors who whisper through the arrangement. It's a language beyond words, where a buffalo knuckle might signal warning, while a porcupine quill offers approval. Modern skeptics dismiss it as chance, yet anthropologists note how these rituals mirror complex memory systems, encoding generations of wisdom into tactile symbols. What sets this tradition apart is its intimacy. Unlike distant gods or abstract spirits, the Amadlozi are family grandparents, warriors, midwives who demand remembrance but also offer protection. A child's unexplained illness might prompt a ritual to honor a neglected ancestor. A sudden wind rustling through dry grass could carry a forebear's counsel. Even the act of brewing umkombothi, the traditional beer, becomes sacred when poured as an offering, a shared meal across the veil of time. Contemporary science is only beginning to grasp what Bantu cultures have long understood, that memory and identity don't reside solely in the individual but in the collective. DNA studies confirm that trauma and resilience can echo through generations, just as the Sangomas teach. Perhaps immortality in this tradition isn't about defying decay, but about ensuring no voice is ever truly silenced, that every ancestor's story, cast in bone and breath, continues to shape the living. In a world obsessed with preserving the self, the Amidlozi remind us that eternity isn't solitary, it's communal, echoing in the laughter and lessons of those still to come. Deep in the steamy jungles of Palenque, where howler monkeys shatter the stillness and vines strangle crumbling temples, a single carved sarcophagus lid tells a story more thrilling than any fiction. Meet Kainish Janob Pakal, the great Mayan king who didn't just rule for 68 years. He crafted his own mythos of resurrection, etching it into stone for eternity. His tomb, discovered in 1952 beneath the Temple of the Inscriptions, isn't just a burial chamber, it's a cosmic roadmap, a visual manifesto of how a mortal king transformed himself into an immortal deity. The lid of Pakal's sarcophagus is a masterpiece of symbolic rebellion against death. Carved in exquisite detail, it shows the monarch not as a corpse but mid-transformation, falling backward into the jaws of the underworld while simultaneously sprouting like a seedling from the back of a cosmic monster. This isn't mere art, it's a theological cheat code. The world tree, the axis of the Mayan universe, pierces through his body, binding earth, heaven, and the underworld into a single moment. To the Maya, trees weren't just plants, they were living bridges between realms, their roots drinking from dark Xibalba while their branches cradled the stars. Pakal didn't just die, he hitched a ride on nature's ultimate elevator. What's striking is how meticulously this vision was engineered. The temple itself functions as a resurrection machine, 9 stepped levels mirroring the 9 layers of Xibalba, with hidden air ducts ensuring Pakal's spirit could breathe during its journey. Even the placement of his jade death mask, with its obsidian pupils staring eternally upward, aligns with celestial events. During the winter solstice, sunlight still slithers down the temple's stairway to kiss the tomb's entrance, as if the cosmos itself acknowledges his gambit. Modern archaeologists used to dismiss these narratives as mere propaganda, until they realized how deeply the Maya interwove astronomy, architecture, and theology into a single science of immortality. Yet Pakal's story holds an ironic twist. For all his elaborate preparations, his true afterlife didn't unfold in the underworld, it happened in our own era. When explorers pried open his tomb after 1200 years, they didn't find a skeleton crumbling into dust, but a figure frozen in motion, his story pulsing fresh as the day it was carved. The king who sought eternity among the stars achieved it instead through human curiosity, his name echoing louder now than it ever did in his own lifetime. The lesson, perhaps immortality, was never about escaping time, but about giving it something unforgettable to carry forward. In the shadowy forests of Slavic folklore, where birch trees whisper secrets and firebirds glow like embers, there lurks a villain whose very name chills the bone: Koshe the Deathless. This isn't your typical monster. Koshe's power lies in a twisted form of immortality, a dark parody of eternal life. Legends say he didn't keep his soul inside his body like the rest of us know. He hid it far away, tucked inside a needle, locked in an egg, buried in a duck, chained inside a hare, and sealed in an iron chest under the roots of the world tree. To kill him, you'd have to unravel this impossible nesting doll of a curse. At first glance, Koshe seems like pure myth until you notice the eerie parallels to our modern tech-driven quest for immortality. Think about it, storing his death in layers of protection mirrors how we back up our digital lives today. Cloud servers, external hard drives, encrypted USBs, they're all just high-tech versions of Koshai's nesting safeguards. We scatter our data across devices and locations, terrified of losing a single byte of our existence. The villain's iron chest, that's your password manager. The duck and the hare, redundant storage systems. The difference is, Koshai's scheme worked until some clever hero followed the trail. Yet there's a grim irony in this ancient tale. Koshai's immortality comes at the cost of fragility. The more layers he adds, the more vulnerabilities he creates. Each hiding spot, needle, egg, duck, is a potential weak link, just like how a single corrupted file can unravel years of digital archives. Modern transhumanists dreaming of mind uploading might scoff at the folktale, but they're playing the same high-stakes game, trying to outsource mortality to external vessels, hoping no one or nothing ever finds the kill switch. What makes Koshai's story endure isn't just its creativity, but its warning. The moment his hiding places are discovered, his invincibility crumbles. In an age where we entrust our memories to fragile technologies, his downfall whispers a sobering question. Are we building our own digital nesting dolls, only to watch them shatter when the next system update or solar flare hits? The old sorcerer's tale might be fiction, but the lesson is bone deep. Real immortality is only as strong as its weakest link. The dream of cheating death hasn't faded with the centuries. It's simply traded alchemical furnaces for liquid nitrogen tanks and ancient incantations for lines of code. Today's pioneers might not chant over elixirs, but their goal remains eerily familiar: to outwit time itself. Enter cryonics, where bodies are flash-frozen at -196 degrees Celsius, suspended in the hope that future science might one day wake them. It sounds like science fiction until you realize it's just the latest chapter in humanity's oldest obsession. Cryonics didn't emerge from nowhere. Its roots tangle back to 17th century experiments where scientists preserved organisms in snow, dreaming of revival. Fast forward to 1967, when Dr. James Bedford became the first human frozen in cryonic suspension, his body stored like a relic waiting for resurrection. Modern facilities like Alchemy in Arizona have refined the process, replacing blood with cryoprotectant fluids to minimize ice damage. Critics call it a high-tech gamble, but supporters argue it's no stranger than medieval alchemists drinking mercury. Except this time, there's actual chemistry behind the hope. Yet freezing bodies is just the beginning. Some visionaries are bypassing flesh altogether, aiming to upload consciousness into digital realms. Projects like Neuralink or the 2045 initiative don't seek to preserve the body. They want to copy the mind itself, creating AI duplicates that think, remember, and feel like the original. The parallels to ancient soul transfer rituals are uncanny. Egyptian priests carefully preserved the brain during mummification, believing it housed the essence of a person. Now futurists scan neural pathways with MRI machines, hoping to map the soul as data. The ethical questions here are as deep as the technology is dazzling. If a digital copy wakes up in a server, is it truly you or just an echo wearing your memories? And who controls these digital afterlives? Corporations, governments, or the individuals themselves? Philosophers wrestle with these dilemmas, but history offers a curious perspective. Every era's immortality quest reflects its deepest fears and boldest tools. Alchemists sought gold and elixirs in an age of metallurgy and medicine. We chase algorithms and nanotechnology in our digital epoch. What binds these quests across time isn't just ambition, it's vulnerability. Whether kneeling before a philosopher's stone or signing up for a brain scan, the driving force remains the same. The ache of impermanence, the refusal to accept that consciousness is just a flicker in the dark. Cryonics and digital immortality might seem like leaps beyond mercury potions, but they're cut from the same cloth. The tools evolve, but the dream, raw, defiant, and utterly human, stays timeless. From the fevered dreams of alchemists to the frozen chambers of modern cryonics, one thread weaves through every culture and era: the refusal to surrender to time's relentless march. Whether carved into Mesopotamian clay or whispered in Himalayan monasteries, these stories share a common heartbeat: the raw, aching desire to outlast our fragile bodies. But why? What is it about mortality that haunts us so deeply, driving kings to drain treasuries and monks to mummify themselves alive? Perhaps the answer lies in our unique ability to imagine futures we'll never see. Unlike other creatures, humans don't just live, we project, we yearn, we leave echoes in art and stone. The very act of storytelling, of etching myths into temples or uploading thoughts to the cloud, is a rebellion against oblivion. Even when the methods change, elixirs giving way to gene therapy, holy grails replaced by silicon servers, the core longing remains unchanged: to whisper, "I was here," long after our voices should have faded. Yet there's a paradox hidden in these tales. For every emperor who craved endless reign, there's a warning: immortality's cost often outweighs its allure. The Sibyl shriveling in her jar, Koschei's brittle dependence on hidden trinkets, even modern cryonics gamble on uncertain science. They all hint that eternity might not be the gift we imagine. What happens when the party never ends, when every sunrise is just a rerun? The most profound myths don't glorify endless life, they ask if it's worth wanting at all. So here's the real secret buried in these 30 tales. The magic was never in living forever. It was in the living fully, fiercely, while we still can. The Incas knew it, turning ancestors into counselors rather than corpses. The Taoists understood, brewing herbs not to stop time but to harmonize with its flow. Even our sci-fi dreams of digital immortality reveal the truth. We don't crave endless days, we crave meaning that outlasts them. As this journey through history's greatest immortality quests ends, I'll leave you with this. If you could sip from the fountain of youth or upload your mind tomorrow, would you? Or is beauty found precisely in life's fleeting breath, the knowledge that every moment is a treasure because it won't come again? Drop your favorite tale from this series in the comments, and let's keep the conversation alive. After all, stories might be the closest thing to true immortality we've ever found.